Okay, so why don't we get started? We may have to divide this year into two parts. There's just a huge amount of material, as you can see. Okay? The topic for tonight is separate seating and mechitzahs at social events, and my gratitude goes to my dear friend and teacher, Rabbi Tzvika Reisman in Los Angeles, who is the author of the series of svarim called Ratz Katzevi, who sent me this, the Makoros for the shiur tonight, as well as the photographs that you have at the back of your packet. We'll talk about that. The top is a chasana that was attended by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. As you can see, he is the second from the left. I'm going to hold it up to the camera just so that the people in TV land can see. Okay, and then the second picture is of Rav Aaron Cutler, who's dancing with the chassan. Now, if you look carefully at the photo, look behind the group of men who are dancing. What do you see? The women are dancing. Scandalous. Okay? And Rav Moshe, of course, is at the head table with men and women together, which, of course, is very common even today at very frum weddings. You have the head table, but the testimony was that the head table was characteristic of the rest of the room. So anyway, the question really is, we all know this is not shocking to us if you see a photo from the 40s or 50s where the standards were very different from what they are today. The question is, halachically, what is necessary and what is unnecessary, shall we say? Now, that's not to say, even if we come to the conclusion that something is necessary or something is unnecessary, does not mean that we should immediately jump to the most lenient position. But knowledge is power. So that when there are situations that arise, when there may be a compelling reason to do one over the other, you now have basis to be able to be well-informed and to make an informed decision instead of making an uninformed decision. Okay? And that's really the purpose of the shiur. Mirza Hashem, you should all be zocha to make simchas very, very soon. And then the question invariably comes up between you and the mechutin or the machatenester: is it going to be mixed seating or is it going to be separate seating? Is there what kind of mechitzah are we going to have, and is there going to be a mechitzah at all? Okay, so let's take a look at the the origin of the sources in the Talmudic sources, the Talmudic texts. We're probably somewhat familiar with because we've learned about the laws of mechitzah before for a beis hakneses. And this is something that is sort of pretty basic. The basis for an Orthodox shul having a mechitzah is from the Gemara in Sukkah. The Mishnah says, "Amru kol misha lo ra'a simchas beis hashoeva lo ra'a simcha miyamav." Of course, the Mishnah is talking about simchas beis hashoeva, which was over Chol HaMoed Sukkos, and everyone would come. The throngs of Yerushalayim, men, women, and children would come to the simchas beis hashoeva, and there would be it was like a circus that was going on, where there would be juggling and fire, the dancing, and things like that. And then b'motzoi Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag Yordu LaEzras Nashim U'Mesaknin Sham Tikun Gadol. The first night of Chol HaMoed, what they do is that they go to the Ezras Nashim, which is part of has the kedusha of the temple, and they would make some kind of great rectification. Great rectification. That's all the Mishnah says. The question, of course, is what was this great rectification? So that's the Gemara's question on Daf Nun Aleph Amid Beis. The Gemara asks in source number 2, "My tikun gadol, Amar Rebbe Elazar, Ka'osa Sheshaninu, Chalaka Haisa Barishona V'Hikifuha Guzuztra." That originally the walls of the Ezras Nashim were smooth. In other words, smooth walls, right? However, then they placed some kind of ledge to protrude out of the walls of the Ezras Nashim so that they could put boards on these protruding beams that were coming out on the sides. V'hiskinu shiyu nashim yoshvos milamala va'anashim milamata. And so they made a decree that the women should sit. Really, probably it means, not clear whether it literally sitting or positioned above on this balcony, and then the men would be positioned down below. Tanu Rabbanan Barishona Hayunashim Mibifnim Vanashim Mibachutz. The Brisa says that originally the women were in the inside of the. Now this is before they built the balcony. Originally they allowed women to enter into the Ezras Nashim first. Of course, chivalrous, that's the thing to do. You let the women go in first, and the men would stand behind them. And that was the way that they separated the genders initially. But this brought to frivolity, which of course the Gemara is saying is a negative thing. You're not supposed to have that sense of frivolity between the genders when especially you're in the Beis HaMikdash. So hiskinu sheyihu nashim yoshvos mibachutz va'anashim mibifnim. So they therefore switched the system, and even though it goes against the rules of chivalry, they wanted to make sure that this would avoid kalus rosh. They said, the men, you go in first, women will be behind you. Hopefully that will rectify the problem, because now the men's backs are to the women, less likelihood of kalus rosh. V'adayin hayubon lidei kalus rosh, but that didn't solve the problem. Maybe temporarily it did, but not in the long run. So hiskinu sheyihu nashim yoshvos milamala va'anashim milamata. So therefore, what did they do? They made a takana that to create this balcony system in the Ezras Nashim, so the women were positioned above and the men were below. So the Gemara then asks the question, Heichi avid hachi. But what right did they have to make a modification to the specs of the Beis HaMikdash? V'haksiv hakol bichsav miyad Hashem alai hiskil. Doesn't the pasuk say in Sefer Melachim that everything was done by the writ of God and by prophecy? So if everything was done by prophecy, what right do you have to change the specifications? So Amar Rav Kra Ashkachu V'Darush, they found a pasuk, and like Rashi says, they found a competing pasuk that says that you have to make a separation between men and women. And so therefore, if the Beis HaMikdash creates a situation of kalus rosh such that the separation is not helping to avoid the kalus rosh, you have to create some kind of change in the structure so that you avoid this mixing of the genders. V'safta haaretz mishpachos levad, mishpachas Beis David levad u'nesheim levad. So it says that in the future, when Mashiach comes, there'll be this great eulogy of families and families separately. The men and the women will be eulogizing separately, I guess, over all of the casualties of the great Milchemes Gog u'Magog. Amru v'halo dvarim kal v'chomer. And so they said, I think that's what it means. I think that's the eulogy over the Milchemes Gog u'Magog. I could be mistaken. I don't remember. So the Gemara now says, now isn't this a kal v'chomer? Umala asid lavo sha'oskin behesped ve'en yetzahar shaleit bohem amr Torah anashim levad v'nashim levad. That in the future world, where we're engaged in a eulogy, and in a eulogy you are in a state of sadness, so there's much less yetzer hara, and yet the pasuk still says that men and women have to be separated. Achshav sha'asukin b'simcha v'yetzer hara sholit bohem al achas kama dekama. So then surely, in a situation where the yetzer hara is present because we're at a time of simcha, we're rejoicing, there's greater propensity for the yetzer hara to creep in, then surely you have to create a separation between men and women. Now, of course, with this source, you are immediately struck with a question, and the question is this a din in Hilchos Beis HaMikdash, or is it a din in Hilchos Kalus Rosh? And if it's a din in Hilchos Beis HaKnesses or Beis HaMikdash, why should this requirement of separating the genders only apply to a place of holiness? I mean, after all, the pasuk that is being cited, V'safta haaretz, is a time of eulogy, is not specifically necessarily taking place in the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, there's no indication, by the way, Rav Moshe will bring this out, we have no indication from the pasuk that this futuristic hesped that will be taking place in the Beis HaMikdash. And yet the pasuk still says that there must be a separation of the genders to avoid kalus rosh. So why would we think that this halacha applies to only a Beis HaMikdash or a Beis HaKnesses and not to all fora where men and women gather? Okay, and this is a very important point.
Isn't Torah Shel though?
What?
Wasn't Torah Shah for the one day a year when they went into the Simchas Beis Yeshueva, when they went into Ezra's Anashim?
I don't understand what you're asking.
They made the changes.
They made the changes for all of Chol HaMoed. Yeah.
For the men going in.
No, because that was the time when everyone was there. That was the reason. Otherwise, women generally didn't come to the Beis HaMikdash. At least certainly not en masse like they did for the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. You would have individual women once in a while. A woman would bring a korban. They would allow her to bring a korban in, and she would send it. But to have this huge gathering, this public gathering, this was the only time in the year when you had this.
So they had an Ezra's Nashim for 3 or 4 days?
Well, it was called the Ezra's Nashim, but it wasn't used. It was Ezra's Nashim for that. It was called that because of that specific time of the year when the women would come also. But it was, that the chambers in the Ezra's Nashim were used for many different purposes having nothing to do with women, right? So anyway, that's the only other place that we have this idea of separating the men and women from each other when there's a gathering is in a Gemara in Kedushin. In Maseches Kedushin Daf Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, Omer of Kahana, Anashim mibachutz v'nashim mibifnim ein choshishin mishum yichud, Anashim mibifnim v'nashim mibachutz choshishin mishum yichud. So Rav Kahana first tells us an interesting halacha. He says if you have a structure that has 2 atriums in it, right, and there's an outer atrium that has the entrance from the outside, and it leads into an inner room. So the room A is from the outside. You enter the building into room A, and from room A you have a door going into room B. So Rav Kahana says that if men are positioned on the outside and women are on the inside, you don't have to worry about yichud, because we're only concerned that that a woman will go walk past the men, not that a man will walk past the woman alone, right? Because the women are in the inside room. So a woman is allowed to have yichud with multiple men. It's just that a man can't have yichud with multiple women. So b'masnisa tana ibcha, and the Brisa learns it just the opposite, and because the Brisa says no, there's a concern that if men are on the outer chamber, there is a problem of yichud because one man might slip away and disappear without anyone of the other men being aware of it, and he'll slip into the back room and have yichud with the women. But anyway, that's just the sidebar. Amar Abaye hashta the Amar of Kahana hachi v'tana masnisa ibcha ana navid l'chomer. So you have to be machmir in both ways, so that when you have a situation like that, you have to be concerned about yichud when you have 2 rooms like that where men are in one room and women are in the other room. And Abaya Dair Gulfi, Rava Dair Kana. But this is the main part, which is Abaya, when he would want, and Rashi basically says, if you take a look at Rashi, where's this Rashi? Gulfi. Makom Kavutzas Anashim V'Nashim, O Lidrasha O Lechupa. That whenever there was a gathering of men and women, either because he was giving a public lecture, or there was some kind of chuppah, so hayemisadir kankanim shel cheres harbe beinehem. He would set up a bunch of earthenware containers to create a separation between the 2 of them. She'im yavo zeh eitzel zeh yikashkeshu v'yisham hakol. To avoid, because if the thing was like an alarm system. If a man would walk over to see the women, or a woman would walk over to see the men, the shards of pottery would break or make noise, and that would be the alarm. Hey, what's going on, right? And Dair lashon dari shuros, and so Abaya did this with gulfi, which is pottery, and Rava Dair kana, and Rava used to do it with bamboo. That, in other words, if you would step on the bamboo sticks, that would also make the noise. Anyway, so that was the safeguard that they created to create a separation between the genders. And you see very clearly, at least the way Rashi understands, that this is not just in a Beis HaKnesses, this is in any situation where we have to worry about a mixing of the genders. Now here it doesn't seem that there's an issue of yichud because you're in a public area. So the question, of course, is Abaya and Rava, are they doing this halacha l'maisa because the halacha requires them to, or was this a midas chasidus, or was this an act of piety that they did in order to sort of upgrade the standards? Clearly, there's a virtue in it. There's a value to doing this. The question is it halachically required or not?
Where did the Ezrat Nashim, where did it get its name from? I mean, was it just from this one?
It was. If I'm understanding correctly, it's because of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva when women would stay there. That's what was known as
the name originally came from.
Yeah, that's
one holiday?
the Ezras Nashim was not originally called the Ezras Nashim. If you look in Sefer Malachim and you want to see the structure of the Beis Hamikdash, it's not called an Ezras Nashim there. Okay. Look at an interesting halacha at the very end of Hilchos Yom Tov in Siman Taf Kuf Chaf Tes, the very last halacha of Hilchos Yom Tov. Chayavin Beistin Laha Mitrot Shoterim Birigolim. This is the language of the Rambam that he extracts presumably from the laws of Simchas Beis HaShoeva. Beistin has to set up officers during the regalim. Now, there's a footnote in my Shulchan Aruch and in my Mishnah Berurah that says this is only true when we have independent political power. In other words, the censor added that because anytime the Shulchan Aruch there would be a halacha about having shotrim, about having our own officers, this would get the government uptight. Hey, you're not some autonomous Sharia law government over here. You don't have a right to set up your own police state within our country. So that's just an interesting historical footnote. But the point is that the Beis Din should set up sort of watchdogs or policemen sheyehu mishotetim umechapsim beganos ubepardesim ve'al hanaharos shelo yiskabtzu sham lechol v'lishtos anashim v'nashim v'yavo lidei aver. That they should go out in all of the parks and in the orchards and by the riverside, because we don't want down by the riverside, right? We don't want any kind of gatherings of men and women to have picnics and eating and rejoicing over there, the avoli de aver, and not come to sin. So basically, can you imagine going to York Hill Park on Yontif and having a rabbi with a black hat and a black suit walking by, very officially and saying, "Good Yontif? Good Yontif?" And just sort of eyeing you. Sorry, break it up. And then but that's what would officially happen. That was in the shtat. That was the law. And this is codified in Shulchan Aruch, right? This is codified. This is what you're supposed to do. V'chein yazhiru b'davar zeh l'chol ha'am, and this has to be publicly announced, from the pulpit, that this is something that we will not tolerate. Shelo yisarvu anoshim v'noshim b'vateim b'simcha v'lo yimshchu b'yayin. That men and women should not gather in their private homes and have, wine parties where there's a lot of drinking going on. Shema yavo lidei avera, lest there come to be sin that ensues, because who knows what could happen. Now with the legalization of cannabis, it's getting even worse. Anyway, but I digress. Ela yiyu kulam kedoshim, but everyone has to be holy. Everyone has to be holy. Yes.
How do you reconcile Tu B'Av then, where all the girls got dressed up?
Okay, that's a great question. Fantastic question. That's part of my shiur that Tzvika didn't give me. I spoke to Tzvika about this and I asked them about this. Anyway, I'm going to get to that. That'll be at the end of the shiur. We probably won't be able to deal with that this evening. Let's get to the basic halacha first. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah says, "V'chein yasiru b'davar zeh l'chol ha'am." So the Mishnah Berurah says, "Hinei be'emes davar zeh hachiyuv tamid lahasir v'limchos mi sheyesh biyado." He says this is not a halacha that is specifically germane to Yom Tov. It's a halacha that is germane to 365 days a year. What is it doing, therefore, in Hilchas Yom Tov? Ela sheberegel matzui hakil kol biyoser. It's just that on Yom Tov, it's the worst time of year for this kind of shenanigans to go on. But the reality is that any time of the year is a time where you have to sort of let people know that there's certain activity that is unacceptable. V'ayin b'simin shin lametes b'bir halacha divrei amaschal lahakel. Take a look in Siman Shin Lametes. Anyone know what Siman Shin Lametes is dealing with? Rikudim and Klei Shir. There you go, right? So what does this have to do with what we're talking about now? because there's a long beer halacha over there that talks about frivolity of dancing. And he says, not only are you not allowed to dance on Shabbos, but there's a big kilkul because men and women are dancing together. Remember that beer halacha? So he brings from a tshuva from the Shar Ephraim this whole his Korei Tagar. He sort of is very, very critical of a practice that was going on in Europe at the time when there would be dancing on Shabbos and Yom Tov, not only with the women standing on the side, but there would be men and women, boys and girls dancing together, mixed dancing. And of course we know the greatest sin in Jewish law is mixed dancing. Everything leads to mixed dancing, right? So therefore, it sort of comes from here, is that this is the most terrible thing, and that's why Mishnah Berurah says, I refer you to there. It is interesting, though, that that they're Korei Tagar on the mixed dancing and not on the actual intermingling. So apparently things got bad at different stages in Jewish history. And the Shar Tzion just adds, he says, "V'avonosenu harabim nisparetz kilkul zeh bizmanenu be'ezem mekomos gam b'yamos hachol." He says, sadly, this kind of pirza of men and women intermingling and being frivolous in their intermingling in Kalos Rosh happens even during the weekday, not during Yontif. Va'avon gadolhu, and it's a terrible sin. Umishi yesh biyado limchos bevadai mechuyev limchos. And anyone who has the opportunity to protest should surely do so. Of course, and this is, all joking aside, this is a serious issue. It's a serious issue in society today, especially because we have this overstimulated generation in which we live in, over-sexualized generation. We have to be very, very careful about these issues. Okay, shift gears, source number 6. Sefer Chasidim. Sefer Chasidim from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid of the 13th, 12th century writes as follows. Kol ha-mevarech she'hasimcha b'ma'ono tzarich lachakor im kiyamu v'gilu bir'ada im ra'ada b'makom gila. We know that it says in the pasuk, v'gilu bir'ada, rejoice with trepidation, which means you have to have moderation in life. You can't have joy without awe. So if you have too much frivolity without any awe of Hashem, you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of the Gilu Bir Ada. Now, where do we say Shahasimcha B'ma'ono? In the benching, right before Sheva Brachas, at Sheva Brachas, we say Nevarech Elokeinu Shahasimcha B'ma'ono V'shachalnu Mishalov Tevo Chayim. So the Sefer Chasidim writes, what do the words Shahasimcha B'ma'ono literally mean? A ma'on is in its place or in its proper framing, really is another way of translating b'ma'ona. So you can only say that if there was a proper measure of trepidation at the time of the Sheva Brachas. If there was not proper awe and reverence at the time of the Sheva Brachas, you won't be able to say Shahasimcha b'ma'ona. Aval im lokeach adam isha she'ina haguna. Ohi lokachas ish she'eno hagun. But in a situation where a man marries an unfit woman, an unsavory woman, or where a woman marries an unsavory kind of guy, oh, shneim einam hagunim, or if both of them are, the oisvarfs in the community, right? So, o ein tarbus sham, or if there's no harmony within the gathering, there's argumentation, v'nivul peh beinehem, and there's crass language, o nashim yoshvos bein ha'anashim, or if men and women are sitting together at the Sheva Brachas, shehirhurim sham, where people are having evil thoughts, lo yitachen levarech sha'asimcha b'ma'ona. You can't say in the Zimun, you can't say Shasimcha b'ma'ona, because you don't have the proper framing of the Simcha. Now, Sefer Chasidim says a lot of wild things. That doesn't mean necessarily that we paskin like this lahalacha just because it's in the Sefer Chasidim. A lot of crazy things in the Sefer Chasidim. I don't mean crazy in the negative sense. I just mean like really, really out there things. So what are we going to do with this? The problem is that the Beis Shmuel, who's who's one of the Nosei Kalim to the Shulchan Aruch and Even HaEzer, uses the Sefer Chasidim to paskin this lahalacha. And he says, and he quotes the Bach, Kosav Bach, Kisha'anoshim v'noshim b'cheder echad, ein omrim sha'simcha b'ma'ono, de'ein simcha kishayetzer hara shaleit. The Bach writes that when men and women are sitting together in the same room, now listen to this, you Hungarians, right? In the same room even, right? Now the reason I say Hungarians is because when I would go to a Satmar Chasna, all my relatives are Satmar, the hall is men in one room, women in the other room. Where do they get that from? They get it from the Beis Shmuel. You have to be in completely separate rooms in order to be able to say at the benching, Sha'asimcha b'ma'ona. Because even if it's separate seating, but it's in the same room, you can't say Sha'asimcha b'ma'ona.
Separate entrances too, right?
Well, right.
That's not just Hungarians.
Hasidish.
Muncie.
It's Hasidish, yeah.
Does it too?
A lot of halls in Eretz Yisrael today are like that as well. Okay? Take a look at the Lavush. With Mordechai Yaffa, the 18th century comes to the rescue. 17th, 18th century comes to the rescue. Ein mevorchen sheva brachos b'pachos me'asara. So first he says you need to have a minyan in order to say sheva brachos k'dichsiv gabe boyaz vayikach asara anashim ziknei ha'ir. V'amrinu levarich birkas chasanim, because we know that Boaz took a minyan of people so that he could say sheva brachos at his wedding with Rus. Now, Amru b'Sefer Chasidim. And then he quotes the Sefer Chasidim, Kol makom sha'anashim v'nashim roin zeh ezeh kagon b'seudas nesuin. He actually says it's even worse. He doesn't say the same room. He says, as long as they can see each other, you can't say sha'asimcha b'ma'ona. Lefi she'ein simcha lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu kishiyesh bo hirhurei aveira adkan. Because you can't say that the simcha is properly framed in the presence of Hashem. Hashem is not happy when there are thoughts of sin. That's the quote from the Sefer Chasidim. Ve'ein nizhar machshav bazeh. Says the Lavush, we're not careful about this today. Meaning, we do say sha'asimcha b'ma'ono, even when men and women can see each other. Ve'efshir mishum da'achshav murgalot hanashim harbei bein ha'anashim ve'ein kan hirhurei aveira kol kach. What's my limud zchus? What's the reason possibly why we're not so careful in this anymore? He says that today it's very different from the way it was in the ancient world. In the ancient world, and perhaps even in the early medieval world, it was very rare to see a woman on the street. What's a woman doing on the street? A woman called Kvuda Bas Melech Penim. A woman is supposed to be inside the house. What is she doing outside? She wouldn't see a woman at a simcha so much. Or in most places, and all of a sudden you see a woman, it's like a chiddush, right? You see a woman. And so, if you remember, by the way, I want you to think back, I don't know if any of you remember, I had mentioned this not too long ago, the previous year on Yom Kippur. Why is it that we read the Arayas on the afternoon of Yom Kippur? So there's a number of Mefarshim who offer different reasons why we read the Arayas, in other words, from Parshas Acharemos. It's got nothing to do with Yom Kippur. So there's a Tosfos who says that the reason why you read the Arayas is because women never come to shul. He says the one day women come to shul is on Yom Kippur. And they want to make sure they see and are seen. And they wear their finest clothing. It's the only time you see women. So since it's the only day out of the year that you see women, it's of course natural to have thoughts that you wouldn't have normally because they're not within your purview.
It's also the Gemara, right?
What?
It's also the Gemara, Tu B'Av and...
Well, like I said, I told Robert, we're going to get to Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur. But you're right, Yom Kippur also, we pointed out, it's related to that, possibly to that Gemara, according to some Mefarshim. But here's the thing. What the Lavush is saying is that was back then, where you would have, a titillating thought, because you would see a woman, it was a rare occurrence. But if it's something that is an everyday occurrence to see women, you interact with women all the time, in your workplace, on the street, in the subway. Everywhere you go, there's men, there's women. It's not a chiddush, right? And so therefore, there's not going to be as much sinful thoughtfulness about this. Dedamyan alan kekaki chivra mitoch rov hergelan beinenu v'keven dedashu dashu. He says they look like us, like white geese. This is a quote from a Gemara in Ksuvas where one of the great sages would pick up a woman and hold her on his shoulders. And they said to him, Rebbe, how can you do this? And he said, because I have no Yetzer Hara. She's like two white geese that I'm picking up. It's like nothing. You know, I always used to lament the fact that I grew up in Los Angeles because, you know, here in Toronto you can drive for miles and not see a billboard. And the billboards that you do see, you know, are for, you know, Coca-Cola or whatever it is. If you drive down Sunset Avenue in LA, those of you who have driven down Sunset, you know that it's in the center of Hollywood that the billboards are just, you know, just imagine as much flesh as they can show on the billboards as they show. And as a matter of fact, there's a Hasidic cheder, you know, right across the street from an adult theater. I mean, it's just that area is, you know, so you would think, oh, what a terrible thing, you grew up in such a sinful place. But there's a benefit to it as well, and the Lavush is actually pointing this out. What's the benefit? You become somewhat immunized, desensitized to those images because it's so pervasive, it's so ubiquitous. I'm going to tell you something else. I don't even know if I should leave the camera on, but I'll leave it on. What the heck? Do you know that there's so many studies that say that in the last century, male sperm count has been reduced by 50%? So no one knows why. It's environmental and all these other things. I think the answer is pashut, and we're just not ready to admit it. We've become so over-sexualized as a society. Males are not producing the sperm because they're not. It's no longer something that is. We're no longer titillated or stimulated by images and thoughts in the way that men used to be. And that's the reason why male sperm count is way down. And unfortunately, it's only going to get worse the more we overexpose ourselves in society. But this is what so this, just getting back to the Lavush, this is what the Lavush is saying, right? He's saying that there's not the same kind of hirhur aveira. And uvechein yizachenu Hashem yisborach liros besimchas bias goalenu uvinyan beis mikdashenu v'lishkon shchinasu besochenu amen kein yiratzon. This is the end of the Lavush on his commentary on Orach Chaim, and therefore he says a bracha. May we see the simcha of our Redeemer and the rebuilding of the temple, etc., etc. In other words, I hope we go back to the good old days where boys were boys and men were goyles were goyles and men were men. Right? Remember that line from one of those TV shows from the 70s. Anyway, so that's the idea that we're mentioned that the Lavush says. So, according to the Lavush, we can be makel to say shahasimcha b'ma'ono even if men and women can see each other. Now, I want you to be careful. The Lavush is not saying that it's okay to have mixed seating. The Lavush is just saying that if men and women can see each other, you can still say shahasimcha b'ma'ona. That's all he's saying. Okay, we can't infer more than what he's saying. Right? Take a look at the Sefer Derech Pikudecha, the Bnei Yissaschar, Rabbi Tzvi Elimelech Shapir of Dinov, who lives in the late 18th, early 19th century. And he writes as follows. Od nichlal bichlal azharazu. That included in this mitzvahs lo saseh of erva is azhara midibure hamosaros im ha'isha kemo shehiz hiranu chazal, is included in excessive conversation with women. As our sages told us in Pirkei Avos, al tar besicha im ha'isha, do not speak excessively with a woman. And he quotes, the Mishnah says, "Bi'ishto amru kal v'chomer le'isha acheres." If that's true, not that you shouldn't speak excessively with your own wife, then surely you should not speak excessively with another woman. Umidei dabri bazeh. Now that I'm on this topic, let me talk about something else. As kor lahazkir lahazir zeli ulebnei gili mashenira li bazeh. I want to sort of get on a soapbox and tell my fellow countrymen, my fellow Jews, what I think about this issue. There's something that's on my mind. Dihinei lefi hadin kimatu davar she'i efshar lihi zaher. He says, when it comes to these matters of speaking with women, it's very, very difficult to be very observant in this matter. Kitzarach ha'adam lispor v'limnos hatevos shemotzi mipiv be'es dabro im ha'isha shelo yosif teva echas b'svas yeser. Because really, technically, if a person wants to obey and comply with this law of altar b'sicha im ha'isha, he should have to carefully measure and count every single word that he says when he speaks to a woman. You know, can you imagine coming home to your wife? Your wife says, "Hi, honey, how was your day?" "My day was fine. How was yours?" Counting every single word that he says to his wife. He's not going to be married for much longer. Okay, so anyway, because he says, now how do I know this? Kamo shekasuv b'gemara behahu d'shoa li'itza be'ezo derech lelud be'heshiva lo galili shaita. There's a Gemara in Eruvin where there was a yeshiva bacher that once asked a woman, and I believe some say that this was Bruria. He asked her, what is the correct way to get to Lud? Tell me the road to Lud. And she said back to him, "You foolish Galilean, lo kach amru chachamim al tar besicha v'chulei." Right? The hayel olomar be'ezel Lud. Why did you use so many words to ask me how to get to Lud? You should have just said 2 words, be'ezel Lud. So you see that a person has to economize as much as possible when speaking with women. Hine al sha'amar teva yesera shahaya efshar lekatzer hochi chasel. You see, this woman rebuked this yeshiva boy for just using a couple of extra words and asking for directions. So hine be'inyan hazeh kimat efshar li zaher. It is therefore almost impossible for us to be careful in this manner. Ubifrat ha'osek b'masa umatan v'chayotze. And the Rabbi Elimelech says, especially if you're a businessman, how do you expect to be careful in this regard when you're dealing with women in the business place? Hine hamon am hadavar hazeh hu lahem kisechok v'lo yachshavu la'avon afilu hamar b'lesaper b'divrei schok v'leitzanu simoyim. He says, even, the hamon am, he says, this whole thing is a galechter, it's a joke. This idea of altar b'sicha im ha'isha. Everyone makes a joke out of it, right? Even we're making a joke out of it. He says, because they realize who would expect, how could you expect a person to economize his words just because it's the opposite gender? And they're not even careful when they joke around with women. And they think that, people who are so frum and they don't want to speak to women, they're just being overly pious. He says, but what they don't realize is that this is a real issue. It's not just some kind of excessive piety, it's a real thing. He says, but you can't be so shocked at these people. They simply don't understand. And he says, so it's not, it's not so surprising if Amaratzim are not careful in this regard, because, they don't necessarily have the Spirit of God within them. They don't know. Aval min atema al balei Torah v'yiras Hashem eino nisarim bazeh. Lishkol bepeles hadiburim shemedaber im ha'isha shelo yadif teva echas abilti mutzrachas. But what is shocking is when you see Talmidei Chachamim acting in this way. And even great rabbis in the times of Rabbi Elimelech were not so chaste in the way that they spoke with women. So how is this? How is someone such as Torah scholar and still is not careful in this regard? V'lo matzasi li heter maspik b'inyanim ka'ela. And I have not been able to find a sufficient heter to find a reason why we can be so flippant about it. Rak tamachti yesedosai al ha'inyan hanemar b'sefer chasidim huva b'vei shmuel be'even ha'ezer. I have relied on, pitched my tent by the Sefer Chasidim, which is quoted by the Beis Shmuel, The besuudas chasanam yeshnam l'sham anoshim v'noshim b'cheder echad lo yomer b'birkas azimun nevarach shasimcha b'ma'ona. That when you're at a chasana, if men and women are in the same room, you can't say the word shasimcha b'ma'ona ki kaviyachol ein hasimcha b'makom sheyetzer hara shalit, because there's no simcha to Hashem where there's a yetzer hara. V'hinei lo ra'inu me'olam mi shechashash lazeh. We don't find that people are careful in this regard, that they are so machmir to make the men in one room and the women in another room. Umatzasi bilavush b'minhagim kasav da'achshav eini zarin bazeh. And yet the Lavush writes that today we're not so careful. And what's the reason? Efshar mishum dinashim urgalos beinenu achshav harbe bein ha'anashim ainu b'masu matan v'umnus v'chanuyos v'chayotze. So he says, like he quotes the Lavush, he says, today women are ubiquitously out on the street doing business and so forth. Ve'en kan hirhurei avera kol kach, the daminirlan ki kaki chivri mitoch rov her gelon b'neinu v'kevin dashu ad kan l'sham. So he quotes the Lavush that women today are like white geese, or is in the minds of men, that it's not considered that you don't get a titillation when you see a woman on the street because it's ma'asim b'chol yom. V'tzarech lomar lefi zeh de be'ei shahaya keren Yisrael al mechono v'ha'isa haparnasa mitzuya lo hayu roin shum isha b'chutz ki lo hayu oskim b'masu mata. And as we pointed out, Rav Tzvi Melech says you have to say that when the Jews were in their heyday, when we were not so impoverished and we didn't have such financial pressures, you never saw a woman outside because women were not engaged in commercial affairs. V'imkein ka'asher hizdame la'adam liros eze isha hayachidush v'nafal hahir b'machshava u'balev. And so if a man saw a woman on the street one day, wow, this is something I haven't seen in a long time. And that would be what would fill him with negative thoughts. Masha'en kein ata b'koived hagolus v'koshi haparnasa hanashim oskos b'masu matan ein kan chidush b'ri'as nashim ki hu davar hamurgal v'lo yitpa'el ha'adam kol kach b'hirhur. Really, but nowadays that women have to go to work because otherwise how are we going to survive? Because we're in gullus, right? So because of that, it becomes commonplace to see women, and therefore it doesn't arouse thoughts. Imkein hachinami b'nidon didan b'inyan marbis hasicha yesh lomer shelo yispoil ha'adam b'marbis hadibra lavoli de'hirhur machmas hahergal amatzui. And therefore you could say the same thing when it comes to this issue where we're so cavalier in having conversations with women. It could be just because it's so commonplace to speak to women today in the course of our daily lives that it's nothing that's going to cause us to have bad thoughts. Aval afal pichein yesh ladun she'en hanidon domeh l'raya dehalo kan b'marbis hasicha asur afilu b'ishto sheragel ba. He says, but it's still not such a great argument because at the end of the day, the Mishnah says, don't even speak excessively with your own wife. Ki hadibur v'hakol hu minyane erva ki hu me'omer b'pasik kolech arev v'marich nove. Because, a voice is something that is sexually provocative. So even for your own wife, you're not supposed to over-sexualize your thoughts. Ve'efsher bizman shahaya hadibur im ha'isha b'chezkas iser v'olo lahirhur asu geder legeder le'esor gam b'ishto aval ke'esh she'ein mesukan machmas hahergel ein kan beis mechosh. And it could be, therefore, that the rabbis said, when women are not prevalent out and about on the street, you shouldn't speak to a woman because you'll sexualize and objectify her voice, and you're going to have bad thoughts, and therefore we extend that to your own wife as well. Today, hearing a woman's voice is nothing provocative, and therefore it's perfectly okay. It's become something that's mutter. Ad kan, the Lavush, and Ad kan, Reb Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov, and now we at least have a pischon peh. We have at least a pischon peh as to why one could argue that even though originally in the times of the Gemara it was more pressing and necessary to create a separation between the genders, even when it wasn't inside the Beis HaMikdash, like in the times of Abai and Rava, where they had to create some kind of alarm system to make sure that if a man was so tempted that he would want to go over to speak to a woman, the the shards of pottery would make a noise and set off, hey, where are you going? Where do you think you're going, right? And even though today we don't have Jewish policemen going out into York Hill Park to try and break up, family gatherings and picnics and things like that, it could be that the limud zchus is because today we are so accustomed to seeing men and women together. Men and women gather in the lobby after davening and they schmooze with each other, right? So it could be that that's the reason. But of course we know, yesh v'yesh. There are many communities where their desire is to restore the standards to what they once were. And therefore, they make separate kiddushes, separate kiddush for men, separate kiddush for women. And that's an attempt to try and restore things to the way that they once were. Whether or not that's appropriate for situations where men and women gather in other venues, you could have in a very, very frum kind of community, separate men's kiddush and separate women's kiddush, and then at the workplace, the men and women are all together. So it's very difficult to try and police and to try and institute, but at least yesh v'yesh. Okay. We'll take a look at a tshuva. We'll start the discussion of the din of Mechitzah, and we're going to sort of have to stop in the middle of our shiur tonight because of time constraints, but I want to get started on the issue of Mechitzah and see how that issue of Mechitzah extends to gatherings where there's either mixed seating or separate seating. Because all we've seen so far is that there's a reason to create separate seating, but not only separate seating, but separate rooms for men and for women. And the only limud zchus that we were able to see to not have separate rooms for men and for women is because today women's presence is ubiquitous in our everyday life. So Rav Moshe, the first tshuva that we're going to see from Rav Moshe is be'inyan ha'mechitzah shetzarich lios beveis haknesses bein anoshim lenoshim v'shiur gova. This is from the year Tafshin Vav. This is now over 70 years ago that Rav Moshe wrote this tshuva, the famous tshuva about the mechitzah. We're not going to go through the whole tshuva, we're just going to see a few lines. So, Bahad sha'ilna levoyer inyan ha'mechitzah shetzarich lios bein anoshim lenoshim beveis haknesses v'kama hu shiur gova. As far as your question, do you need this is from the Menayel of Torah V'das, do you need to have a mechitzah? It's amazing how times have changed. Of course, what do you mean? You have to have a mechitzah. Of course you have to have a mechitzah. Well, that's because 70 years ago, this was a real shaila, where very frum people would go to places where they didn't have a mechitzah. So the question is, do you need to have a mechitzah in the Beis HaKnesses? So you asked me the question to explain the principle of mechitzah. Shetzarich lios bein anoshim lenoshim beveis haknesses v'kama hu shiur gova aliba dehilchasa. You want to know halachically how high does the mechitzah have to be? We don't find any codification in Shulchan Aruch about hilchas mechitzah, how high the mechitzah has to be. Mishum sheyesh mekomos b'medina aseinu zu sheischilu lifrotz b'inyan hamechitzah shebein anoshim lenoshim beveis haknesses. We see that there are very traditional communities now that have started to abuse this issue of mechitzah. Shenisha lanu lemikdash ma'at. That in the Beis HaKnesses is like a mini Beis HaMikdash. So we know that there was a separation of the genders in the Beis HaMikdash. So obviously there has to be that in the Beis HaKnesses. But, some people are not regarding it carefully. Ve'efshir she'ein chashudim sheyavru adina ela mechisaron yedias chomer ha'isr. And we're not here to point an accusatory finger at these people. Maybe they just don't know that it's such an important halacha. And therefore, v'lechein rotzek v'toraso sha'avar mekor hadin v'chomer ha'isr v'shir goyva ha'machuyev. And therefore, you want me to detail for you the origin of this halacha and how high the mechitzah has to be. So, of course, Rav Moshe goes into a very extensive discussion, which has become the sine qua non textual source for Hilchos Mechitzas, from the Tshuva of Rav Moshe, from the very first volume of Igros Moshe. But he says, Hayotzi, and of course he starts with the Gemara in Sukkah, etc., etc. Hayotzi mizeh, gam bebote kinesio shemiskabzim shamanoshim v'noshim liyispalel, tov yoser lasos gazuz terasha hanoshim yihiyu lamayla. So what emanates from all of this discussion that I've been talking about, where we saw the Gemara in Sukkah, is that the best kind of mechitzah is to create a women's balcony. V'im me'ezatam kasha lasos gezustra tzrichim lasos mechitza mamish kezu shetimna milavu lidei kalus rosh. He says, and if for whatever logistical reason you're not able to construct a women's balcony, then the next best thing is to create a partition which will make sure that we don't come to kalus rosh, to frivolity. V'lo sogi bamesh shenechsheva mechitza l'chol davar kagon b'sha'arim pesuchim kemo shira'inu shelaho'ilo b'mikdash v'haya aser mid'oraisa. Rav Moshe's point, Rav Moshe extracts from the whole story in the Maseches Sukkah that the din of mechitza is a din de'oraisa in a Beis HaKnesses. Now, how does Rav Moshe know that? So remember, if you remember the Gemara says, Alai Hiskil, right? This was all a nevuah. The construction of the temple was a nevuah. And if it was a nevuah, then what right do we have to violate the specifications of the nevuah? It must be that just like it was al pi Hashem to have a certain a Beis HaMikdash constructed in a certain way, it's also al pi nevuah from Hashem that you have to create a separation between men and women in the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore, Rav Moshe concludes that there's a din de'oraisa of mechitza in a Beis HaKnesses. Not just a derabbanan, a de'oraisa, that you have to have a mechitza in a Beis HaKnesses. And therefore, he says, it's not just enough to have a halachic mechitza of 10 tfachim, which for other purposes acts as a halachic mechitza, for separating reshuyos and things like that. It has to prevent kalus rosh. ולכן לא סגי גם במחיצה של 10 טפחים מן הקרקע שאינו כלום לעניין קלוס ראש, אשר יכולים לדבר ולהרבות שיחה עם אנשים בלי שום קושי, וליגע בידיהם, ואין לך קלוס ראש גדולה מזו. And therefore you can't just have a halachic mechitza for Hilcha Shabbos, or for Hilcha Sukkah, just because a wall is 10 tfachim high, it may constitute a wall for a sukkah. But if a man and a woman can converse and hold hands over the mechitza, that's not stopping kalus rosh. V'nechshavu k'mu'ravin mamish v'asami d'oraisa shegruhi m'mechitza shehivdila ben ezras nashim l'chel b'mikdash shelaho'ila af shahaisa yoser nikar el tzrichim lasos mechitza gavoa b'mida kazu shelo yavo lidei kalus rosh. And he proves that from the Gemara in Sukkah. Now, what is therefore the regulation mechitza for a Beis HaKnesses? So Rav Moshe says, "Avol mistaver lanius daiti shesagi b'mechitza gavoa ad achar hakesofayim." Rav Moshe's chiddush is you only need a mechitza to go up to the shoulders. Shoulder length, shoulder height mechitza is sufficient. He says, "Daharei chazinan shehamechitza ena mitzad iser histaklus kidekasafti leel, shozeh harei yadu gam mitchila mikol makom hitiru v'lo chashu lazeh." And Rav Moshe proves this from the fact that the balcony in the Ezras Nashim in the temple was not an opaque balcony. It wasn't that the women were walled in. You could see the women. If you were standing on the floor of the Ezras Nashim and you looked up, you could see women. Just like you go to the bayit, you turn around, you could see women. Or you look in front of you, you could see women if you just look up. So you see from here that it's not an issue of histaklus. Now, I want to be very careful. We're going to hold it here for tonight, and we'll come back to this issue. This was one of the biggest machlokos between Rav Moshe and the Satmar Rav way back, 70 years ago, in the 1940s, when this first arose. Because the Satmar Rav had a totally different mahalach in understanding the Sugya in Maseches Sukkah. He felt that the purpose of the balcony was to create a visual barrier so that you wouldn't look at women and have hirhurim. But Rav Moshe says the issue is to prevent kalus rosh. And as long as you can prevent frivolity of interaction between men and women, you fulfill the obligation of mechitzah. So we'll continue that next time. I also just want to let you know that one of the things that we have to look at is this unique to Beis HaKnesses? Or does it apply to other venues outside of a synagogue? And another sort of corollary of that question is, let's say you're in the Beis HaKnesses, but you're not davening. Do you need a mechitza? For example, what about at a wedding that's in the shul? Do you need to have separate seating? Do you need to have a mechitza? Like all of these issues become real issues. And that's all, Rav Moshe has a series of tshuvas that we're going to need to go through in order to get a better clarification on these matters. So we'll hold it here. We'll also undertake the issue of Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur about the Benos Yisrael who would dance in the vineyards in front of the boys. We'll talk about that in Yirtzeh Hashem next time as well. And enjoy the photos in the back. Okay, we'll see you later.